Hello and welcome to another Debating Europe online panel discussion with me, Joe Ladabarsky. I'm the editor of debatingeurope.eu, which is the discussion platform of the think tank Friends of Europe in Brussels. And a couple of weeks ago, at the beginning of April, we launched a debate on our platform asking whether you think the COVID-19 pandemic has pushed European small and medium-sized enterprises to go digital. You sent us in a bunch of comments, questions and ideas, and we've collected them all together and we're going to discuss some of them here today. I think it's a really important topic, and I'm very happy to have joining me a digital panel of policymakers and experts to respond to your comments. And joining us, we have André de Aragão Azevedo, Portuguese Secretary of State for the Digital Transition. Welcome, André.
Hello, Joe.
Hi, André.
Invitation to take part in this panel.
Welcome. We're also joined by Birgit Weidel, who is Head of Unit for SMEs at the European Commission's Directorate General for the Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs. Thank you for joining us, Birgit.
Hello, nice to be with all of you today.
Welcome. And also on our panel is Karen Massin, Head of Government Affairs and Public Policy EU Institutions from Google. Karen, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion.
Wonderful. And last but not least, we have Jake Ward, President of the Connected Commerce Council, which is a non-profit organization supporting and empowering small businesses digitally. Thank you for joining us, Jake.
It's my pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so let's start with you, Jake, if that's okay, because your organization has published some research on this recently. And I want to begin just to kind of open the debate with a general question, which was sent in from Sabrina, or a comment. She is very emphatic that, yes, the COVID-19 pandemic has pushed small businesses to go digital. So she's made her mind up. Jake, what did your research find?
Sabrina's right. The Connected Commerce Council is a nonprofit organization that works with small businesses in Europe and North America to help them connect with the resources they need in normal times, in the best of times, to start, run, grow their business. As we all know, these are not normal times. And the past year has been an extraordinary challenge for the economy, for our communities, and particularly for our small businesses. Beginning May, June of last year, we began conducting a series of economic analysis and small business research projects to get an idea of how bad things really were. We were hoping to help with finding solutions for public and private partnerships for small businesses. Remember, this is a time when capital was at its most unavailable, right? PPP loans were rolling out in the US. Europe was looking for ways to create a cushion for small businesses. And what we found in the United States is that there was, in fact, a digital safety net, a trend line that said that the more digitally empowered a small business was, the less likely it was to go out of business, the more likely it was to, in fact, hire. And in the instance of the pandemic, the more likely it was to survive. We very much wanted to take the lessons we'd learned from that research and apply them to a European model, adjusting, of course, for the unique nature of EU nation states. The same trend line holds. There is a digital safety net. There is value for those businesses that were already using digital tools and resources and online marketplaces. But to Sabrina's question, and a vast majority of European small businesses have migrated additional resources, additional time and investment to online tools. And that largely has been the safety net for millions of European small businesses.
Okay, so that's quite. I mean, in some ways, that's a sort of optimistic picture. I mean, it's been an incredibly challenging 12 months. Everyone, I mean, that's an understatement of the year. But having this safety net clearly is a more optimistic kind of picture. André, what about your own perspective? Do you think that the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the digital transition for small businesses?
Thank you, Joe. I would like to start by thanking to Debating Europe to take part in this panel. My answer to Sabrina's question is definitely positive. 99% of Portuguese companies are SMEs, in line with the great majority of European countries. And in Portugal, in 2019, we had 40% of our SMEs with a digital presence. And that number climbed to 60% during 2020. Meaning a 50% growth in a year, which is obviously something impressive. And it is also impressive because it demonstrates speed and agility from these SMEs, but also represents a very fast adaptation from our consumers that change their pattern of consumption. But of course, it is also true that we still have a way to go, meaning there is still a significant percentage of Portuguese companies, 40% of them, that still resist to going digital and potentiate their businesses. We have other challenges. Only 27% of the companies with the digital presence have integrated their online and physical stores, which means that the level of maturity of their digital transition is still a little bit low. And one thing is to have a website or being present on a digital platform. Another thing, as we all understand, is to have a digital strategy to really transform their businesses, models, and their real operations. And when we see this question, it's easy to forget that digital is not something new. It's something that even before the pandemic crisis was already pretty much clear that going digital represents a competitive advantage for every business. And we need to work at different levels in skills with the leadership teams. We need to work and give and reskill our employees. We need to make sure that we change our operations, and we need to enlarge our potential market as a whole. So I totally think that this is a trend. It was an accelerator. I hope we don't revert this trend.
Interesting. I think there's so much you've brought up that I think we're going to come into during the debate, including the question of digital skills and whether the trend is sticky, whether it reverts or not. Karen, before we get into that, though, I'd like to bring you in just to answer Sabrina's question, this kind of opening question. What would you say to this idea that the pandemic has pushed small businesses to go digital?
Well, I think it's true as well. Basically, I think, digital has been like a lifeline to all of us. It allows us to work like we're doing now. It allows actually, to get the news, to buy online. And for companies, it allows them to keep their customers and to find new customers. I think it's fair to say that, COVID has created a leap forward in terms of technology change. We've moved years, quite a few months. And I think in looking at statistics, 60% increase on internet use really shows, the importance of it. Also, what we've seen is that, on our search, there's been 2 times more search on online shopping, buying online. So you really see, how much the shift has operated fast and how this has, impacted a lot of companies. And I think, it's fair to say that, companies, they needed to buy. So there were different things they need to sell. There are different things they've been doing. And, either they actually showed if they were open or not open, if they could actually do delivery, if they could do, sales, online. So it has been a very big shift for them, and it's not been easy. It's true.
Okay. And Birgit, what about yourself? What are your kind of thoughts on this question or this comment from Sabrina?
Yeah, I would just want to subscribe to everything what the previous speaker said. We have observed this trend very strongly also at a EU-wide level. Certainly, of course, the use of e-commerce going on platforms that allowed you to stay in business, but also in other sectors where we had to find online solutions with the remote working and thinking of the educational sector. So it has been a clear accelerator, and I would say also eye-opener. We also see it in figures. We know that there's a huge decrease in turnover generally for the SMEs, but those who really went digital or were digitally more advanced, they were faring much better. So we have the clear figures on this. And yes, this is definitely a momentum that we at the EU Commission also want to use. Also in the recovery phase, we think there's no back to normal anymore. We will build upon this. And so this is also why with our recovery efforts, with the big aids that the Commission will also put to the disposal of the member states, we really want to kind of continue this trend, because we see generally a huge potential here for our SMEs. It will be much more easy for them to go international and so on. So yes, fully subscribe to everything you said, and that the pandemic in this sense has been really a kind of accelerator.
Interesting. This is fascinating. And I really, like, my ears pricked up when you said there's no back to normal or back to the old normal. I think we've all been kind of wondering what the new normal is going to look like. And now, so I personally am a huge kind of tech geek. I love technology, but I get told off often for not thinking critically about what digitalization is, where we're going. So I want to put this next question from Chika to the panel. So because I think I was in a forum recently and I was talking about how brilliant digitalization was and how I really supported it. And someone said, look, digitalization to them is not a destination, it's a process, it's a tool to reach sustainability or to reach economic growth or to reach a better quality of life. And in some cases, perhaps digital isn't the right tool in every situation. And Chika sort of hints at this question of what is digitalization? What are we trying to achieve with the digital transition? Chika says, in my immediate area, no small businesses have turned digital at all. The most they did was open a Facebook page to advertise their products, which they kept selling offline. This raises the question, what does it actually mean for a business to go digital? What are we asking of them? What do we want to achieve? For a small business, maybe opening a social media account is basically enough, or is there more that we want? I'm going to put this question to a man who has digital transition in his job title. It is André, the Secretary of State for the Digital Transition. For you, André, what is the purpose of the digital transition? What are we trying to ask? What are we trying to get these small businesses to actually do?
Thank you for the question, Joe. Obviously, I agree with Chico when she says that opening a social media account it probably is not doing a full digital transition, and there is no one-size-fits-all strategy. We all agree that we need to make a concrete assessment on each business and understand exactly what should be the needs, what is the profiling of that company, what is the potential market to be addressed. But I agree that in most of the cases, opening a social media account can be a great starting point. You need to start interacting, understanding the full potential, to unleash the full potential of the digital, and then making it as an incremental process in which you will be adding value, adding new features, and transforming your business model. That's what I do think it makes sense. It having a gradual approach, not a big bang, and probably this requires also working in other dimensions. Talking about skills, obviously you need to be ready, understand exactly what is the kind of challenge you are addressing. If you have inside your organization the right skills to go through that process, you need also to make sure you understand the different kind of instruments and tools that are available. I'm talking about business analytics, dashboards, CRMs, user experience tools. All those tools are relevant, and all those dimensions are relevant to have a full multi-dimensional approach to digital transition. So answering to Chika's question, I understand, and probably in a very small minority of cases, we can say that it doesn't make sense to go digital, but I still haven't found that particular niche of market, because every business nowadays is a digital business, is digital. You can at least take some kind of advantage of going digital, or at least take advantage of the use of some digital tools.
Interesting. That's fascinating. Jake, every business right now is digital. That's an interesting point. What are we asking? What is a digital business? What are we asking these digital businesses to do?
Well, I think that André hit a great point there, and I'd love to get his thoughts in response to this, actually, and maybe this is a little too conceptual first thing in the morning, but I think the reality is that digital is the placeholder we use to apply to a variety of tools. But what we're really saying is that this is a way to be more efficient and to be more agile, right? That it doesn't, whether you're selling goods or services on a website, or you're using a back-end tool that supports your supply chain, you can see value in that digitization. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, certainly. What there needs to be is a willingness to use modern contemporary tools to support your business needs, whether that is a roofing and siding company or an online marketplace. There is a wide spectrum of options and use cases, every one of which benefits from using the best possible tools at scale at the lowest cost.
Interesting. I will get André's reaction, but I want to first come to Karen and then Birgit on this. So Karen, first of all, you, if it's okay, what Chika's sort of wondering what it means for a business to go digital. What do you think?
Well, I think there are different grades of going digital. If you've got a local pizza shop, which is like, you need to understand, are you open, are you not open? I mean, they don't need to sell their pizza to Japan. I mean, that's not relevant, but basically you need the local customers like me to understand, are they open? Can I do delivery? Can I do, these kind of things? I mean, I also had, a local, my local curtain shop, I need to know, are they open? So I took an appointment. And so I think there are quite differences of going digital, but what is important is be able to retain your customers and to grow your customers. If you look like, with what we do, which is Google My Business, which is our interface for business, they can actually put these kind of hours so that you find them on all the search, on all the maps, and that's extremely useful basically for companies. We came up with more than 200 products during the pandemic to be able to help companies actually, go through the pandemic and be able to provide, the services they want to provide. And I think, I'll take two examples because I think they're quite interesting. In Poland, there was a small company which is making handmade accessories. And before that, they were only selling, with the trade shows and the festivals. And of course, all that disappeared. So we helped them, with our training on digital tools. They went online and they basically were able to save 70% of their sales. And I think for me, that's really shows about going online, actually help them, to keep on the customers and go through, the post deliveries. And the same thing, there's a French shop, which is called La Maison des Sœurs Macarons in France. And they're basically doing like, sweets and chocolates. And they lost all their customers, 90% of their turnover, disappeared. And basically through training and going online, they were able to double their online community and to actually almost like go back to their sales. And then they found new customers online, or they're actually shopping, to actually further than before. So in a way, it's paradoxically, you may lose, some of your local customers, but you gain new customers, outside. And we also have one or two tools, as an example, which is good, is like, we basically provide information for retailers about what is trending on search so that they can adapt, their sales and actually propose this kind of products. So that's one of the examples.
Interesting. And thank you for those examples, because as Jake said, there is a danger of becoming very conceptual, but we're talking about real businesses. We're talking about people's experiences. So this is why, for me, this topic is so fascinating, because it does mix this sort of very high level kind of digital transition conceptual discussion with on the ground experience, people living through the digital transition. So Birgit, from the Commission's perspective, what is the digital transition? What's the aim? What do you want small businesses to do?
But what we definitely don't think about is, it's not that every entrepreneur has to become an IT specialist, knows about high power computing, AI, and so on. This is not the issue. The issue is to understand what is the potential that digitalization in its different forms can bring to my business model. How can I optimize? How can I get, as Jake said, more efficient, more agile? Being an entrepreneur means in the end being also innovative, lifelong. If you want to stay in business for longer and to be competitive, you have to come with new ideas, you have to adapt. And digital technologies are offering a huge potential. It's true that for SMEs, it's not always easy to capture and to understand what is this potential. And this is why we in the Commission are also trying to work on that angle, that we try to offer support services to not so, how should I say, digitally advanced companies to understand what can I do? Is it just to have a Facebook account? Or, for example, can I have additional efficiency gains in my production processes and so on? We have also a good example of a bakery, for example, who went online. They had a very good online ordering system, and they also combined it with some more efficiency processes in the production, meaning that it was easier for them to find also staff, because they didn't have to come in that early anymore. So there are a lot of benefits that you can get from digitalization. And what we are trying to do at EU level is really to try and help companies to identify this potential of digitalization. But of course, as it was mentioned, it's not a one size fits all. There are different degrees, and it depends on in which activity you're active in.
That's fascinating, very interesting. And so it brings me kind of to the next question. I'm going to group two comments together, one from Tom and one from Liz, because I think they're very similar. And this is, it's André already mentioned this question of reversion. You know, how many businesses are going to stay digital? Lots of businesses have been forced to digital, but are we in an artificial situation right now where if you want to continue to operate, you need to go digital once the kind of pandemic, and we hope as soon as possible, once the pandemic is over, will those businesses stay digital? So the question from Tom says once the pandemic is over, no, a lot of businesses that have gone digital will probably revert back. Whereas Liz sends in a comment saying, well, I think a lot of small businesses just won't be able to run both physical operations and digital operations once the lockdown has lifted. They won't have the resources to manage both, particularly if they only have a small number of employees. So they will have to choose, which is an interesting point. Jake, what would you say to this question of you know, okay, you've done research which shows that lots of businesses have been using digital as a safety net. They've got all these tools. There are efficiencies to be found, but after the pandemic is over, our digital's going to stay? Our business going to stay digital? Do you think?
Most will. Our research found that a little over half of those small businesses that increased their digital footprint, increased the tools that they were using, will continue to do so post-pandemic. I think, like all things, there's going to be a spectrum. It's Liz and Tom are both right that there is a capacity issue. As small businesses ramp back up, they employ more staff, they will have to make choices about where they put those investments. It is remarkable, however, I had a similar conversation last week with a small business in Raleigh, North Carolina, a brewery that had taken its entire business off online and was doing sales, had matched its capacity and was looking to keep 30 to 40% of that growth, which would result in an increase in its sales in 2022. And then we have a French chocolate company doing the same thing, right? This is not a phenomenon that is unique to a location or an industry. It is in fact unique to small businesses, to the entrepreneurial spirit of building, being resilient, being innovative, taking the opportunity to assess what is happening with your business and adjust accordingly. You mentioned before, Joe, that the idea of the digital safety net was optimistic. There's no question that is true, but we should also understand that it didn't catch everybody, right? That it was there for small businesses that were already using tools. It caught many, many millions of small businesses that incorporated and integrated those tools, but that we need to work together, public and private, at the EU level, at the national level, to expand that safety net and to lower the barrier to entry from an education standpoint, from an adoption standpoint, so that businesses can make a reasonable choice between, do I invest in digital advertising, a CRM, a back office tool that can improve my efficiency, as well as hire back the staff that I wasn't able to keep during the lean months of the pandemic.
That is an interesting question. And also, I mean, when you talk about like investing in digital CRMs and so on, is there an argument also, do you think, Jake, that once a small business has kind of jumped, when it's taken the plunge and has made that investment, that it is going to increase the chances that it's going to stay digital, because it's built up the skills, it's invested in training, it's got the kind of tools. There's a kind of pretty strong incentive to keep using them after the pandemic, particularly if it's been expensive to invest in the training and in the tools.
There's no question about that, though. I would say that the expense is almost always in time, not money. Right? It's an investment in learning to use the tool, self-training, using tutorials, using organizations like 3C to work through which tool I should integrate. There is also increasing evidence that tool use, resource use grows at a magnitude, so that if you use a CRM and you use a back office tool and then you move into an analytics, you are getting significantly higher value with each building block. It's the idea of, you could lay building blocks out horizontally on the floor, or you could start stacking them to get vertical growth. And that vertical growth is what leads to agility and sustainability.
Interesting. André, so I think in the first question to Sabrina, we all kind of seem to be on the same page. The pandemic has sort of supercharged the digital transition. You actually mentioned in your response this question of reversion. What do you think after some of the social distancing restrictions are eased? Do you think that we're going to have businesses go back to the old way of doing business? Is digital, are they going to stay digital? Are they going to have a hybrid approach? What do you think?
I definitely think that we will not revert all this new trend. I think it's pretty clear. Everyone that has gone through this process clearly understands the potential that the digital is bringing to their business. I've been talking to many entrepreneurs, many company owners and founders that basically, when they understand the full potential, they typically unblock their resistance or their typical objections to going digital. And I don't think we should look at digital as an alternative to physical. In fact, it's just about adding competitiveness to businesses and adding value. And so the good thing about it is that you can go digital without the need to make a huge investment. As Jake was mentioning, investing on digital is probably much more about time and not so much about money. You can do it incrementally. And that is why today, with the different tools we have available, it is possible, and it was possible, to democratize this digitalization. And the thing I would like to underline is that the most important change is about the change of mentality and culture. I feel that the pandemic crisis gave a boost to this acceleration. And the most important thing, as we know from history learnings, is that mentalities are probably the most difficult factor to change. And people need to understand that the advantages of going digital. And the fact is that pandemic crisis unblocked all those objections that we were feeling. But of course, we need to work at different levels, as also Jake was mentioning. We need to make sure that this is a pretty big opportunity to grow. And the one thing I would like to make sure is that in every organization has clearly reflected on the challenge they are facing, and truly understanding the potential that they can bring to their own companies, and the level of competitiveness that they will bring if they truly go digital.
Okay, I want to, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I want to start kind of thinking about wrapping things up. But first, I want to bring in another question I'd like to hear from Birgit and Karen on this, but do please, both of you, feel free to respond to anything that's come up earlier. So the question is from Anne, who thinks there's a generational divide, saying a lot of older managers or those with an old-fashioned mentality will push for their businesses to be back operating physically after the pandemic, as that is what they are used to. Is that a fair comment or just old-fashioned ageism? But also, I'd like to kind of bring in this question of digital skills, which was raised, because there might also be a kind of skill issue here, or a kind of comfortableness, and there is a risk of a digital divide where those businesses which are very comfortable in the digital world will thrive, and there's a kind of decoupling where others are less comfortable and less able to kind of take advantage of the opportunities. And skills, to me, as well as infrastructure, seem to be at the kind of heart of that. So Birgit, maybe I can have your thinking on this. How would you respond to this kind of comment on the possibility of a digital divide or a generational divide?
Well, I think there's definitely a point there, right? It's clear that, of course, a certain generation hasn't grown up with this kind of digital environment, and it's definitely something that we are also seeing. This is why we also think that it's very important in all this debate that we have on skills. I mean, I think that the younger generation is already very well advanced in all this, what we call the STEM cells. I mean, the STEM skills. But it's also important to consider this upskilling and reskilling, and not only the relation to the workforce, but also to managers. And this is why we are also running programs in this respect. We also have programs where we bring together younger managers, for example, with older managers, so that they can benefit, the one from the experience of the more established, and the other, the older one, from the digital native, if I can say so. So it has definitely, this is definitely something to take into account, and this is why it's so important to also think of this, what we call lifelong learning and upskilling, and also that it's not just for employees. That's of course also an important aspect, that the companies have access to this skilled workforce, but also that the managerial level has a bit of this. And as I said, it's not about being, you don't need to be a specialist. You just need to understand the potential of what these technologies can mean for your business.
Interesting. Karen, I know that Google has been doing a lot with digital skills. What are your thoughts on how to kind of avoid a digital divide, be that generational, or it could be rural, urban, it could be, however it is, how can we make sure it doesn't happen?
Yeah, and I think, I think there is a divide, but I would actually add it's not because you're playing video games that you actually know how to do coding, or that you actually know, how to use AI into a business. Or so I think, even, there is a paradox. We run a study with McKinsey who was saying that, the jobs are changing, society is changing, jobs are changing. And we actually face a paradox of high youth unemployment and shortage of digital skills. So it's about how you actually, as Birgit was saying, you basically develop these skills, these capabilities across the society. And so one thing we're doing is, of course, we're providing, some training. I mean, we've trained about 17 million, in Europe in terms of companies and people, because they need to learn the skills of the future and be able actually to help, the companies and then the businesses that will be, developing and that we don't know what their needs are for the moment.
Okay, we're out of time almost. I want to do one last kind of tour de table just for final comments. I'm going to throw in a last kind of parting comment from Tomasz, who says, look at the stock prices of all major tech companies since COVID kicked in. They've all shot up, meaning tech has played a major part in keeping the global economy ticking over. But the question is, how can we make sure that SMEs and not just major companies also share in that success? And I know the stock market is not a great indicator necessarily of economic success on its own, but I think the point is, again, about inequality, about kind of how those companies which are well placed to take advantage of digital are going to potentially do very well, and the fear from some of our readers that there may be some who are left behind or left out. I'll quickly, very short because we've got to wrap up, I'll quickly give you just kind of a few moments just to kind of give concluding remarks. Jake, let's start with you, and then we'll go around the table.
I think that it's always important to understand that this is an ecosystem, right? This is a global economy that's more interconnected than maybe we even imagined 12 months ago. To Tomasz's question, the investments made by large technology companies, whether they be European or US based, have enabled tens of millions of small businesses to stay in business and grow over the past year. They will also be there for the recovery. Is there inequality in terms of the digital divide of who has the skills and who doesn't? Absolutely. But as Karen just said, that investment is also being made by those companies. We're all in this together, and that growth is good for everybody. It's good for our communities, our economies. It's good for the recovery.
Okay, André, final words. What would you say?
Well, I definitely agree with the comments of Jake. Definitely, there is some kind of challenge in terms of inequality between the different kind of companies that interact in this digital world. I refuse to accept that being small is necessarily a disadvantage, and we have several examples that small companies like startups are truly competitive and are able to be very agile, very fast in responding to this pandemic crisis. Let me share with you some very interesting conclusions of an Ernst & Young recent study on the Portuguese ecosystem of startups, which demonstrates that our startups were in counter cycle in terms of economic performance. In fact, 42% responded to our survey, mentioning that they were able to grow during the pandemic crisis, and almost 80% were working perfectly normally, which means that they are much more resilient to a pandemic crisis. And in my opinion, the explanation for this bigger resilience results from the fact that they have human resources with better qualifications, with much higher skills, and at the same time they are digital natives, which means that their business models are by default adapted to this digital world. My conclusion is that, of course, we need to think and try to balance the importance of these big tech companies that in some way they are capturing a lot of value for the entire ecosystem. But I refuse to accept that being small is necessarily bad. In fact, it can be more agile, it can be faster in responding. So I think we have a challenge, but we need to respond with energy and thank you once again. It's my final comment. Thank you once again for taking part in this panel.
Karen, what about what's Google's perspective on this? How would you respond to Tomasz's point?
I think small businesses are the backbone of the global economy. It's not the few hundred big companies which actually make the real difference. But I think it's fair to say that the small companies, they need investment, and they need to be able to be supported. And I would go back to what André was saying. It's an ecosystem. It's about us working together. It's about us partnering together. Whether it's it's on finance. For instance, we've just given loan in partnership with the European Investment Fund. I mean, we think, we be able to actually give money to 1,000, SMEs so that they can develop. We're also partnering with trade unions, with job seekers, agencies, also with, youth organizations. So it's about making it happen, spreading it, because it's together we're going to actually recover, I believe.
Okay, and last word to Birgit from the European Commission. How do we bring everyone along with the digital transformation?
Yeah, first, I wanted to just say that we agree that we also see a very thriving startup community in particular who is driving this digital transition. And I think there is a lot of market still where also smaller companies can get in. There are, of course, certain areas where we know we have a certain dominance of big players. And here we want to also create, let's say, fair market conditions to make sure that also new entrants can come in. And I think one aspect that is very important for us in the Commission that we are working on is it's data is the new oil. So, and there we are looking now at ways how we can make data available, for example, public data. The public sector is a huge data collector, and how can we put this at the availability of smaller companies so that they can also use this big data, the potential that they come from this data. So here we are also working very much on ensuring this fair access to data and sharing data, because this will be the key also for the future. And the key for an equal, giving equal conditions to bigger and smaller players.
Fascinating. See, I said at the beginning I was a tech geek, and this stuff, it just is music to my ears, really. It's fascinating stuff. But we could go on for longer, but we have to put a pin in it here. I'm afraid we'll have to call it a day. So I want to thank my panel. Thank you all for participating. It was a really, I think, rich and interesting discussion. Thank you at home for watching. If you have more comments and suggestions, you want to kind of get feedback from experts and policymakers, send them in on our platform, debatingeurope.eu. Once again, thank you for watching, and please do share on social media and so on. Please spread the word. Everybody, thank you for taking part, and have a wonderful day.